The movie commences with a bustling airport scene, as reporters from various TV channels deliver live updates in front of their cameras. Amidst the chaotic atmosphere, several reporters have gathered to investigate the happenings, as this marks a significant event. After a year since the start of 2016, the first ever extradition between the Philippines and South Korea is taking place at 4 p.m. today. A group of 47 Korean criminals who fled to the Philippines after committing crimes in Korea are now being repatriated via chartered flights. The reporter emphasizes the collaborative efforts of the police, utilizing the special forces of the citizens and the motorcade personnel to ensure a successful operation. As the victims' families gather outside the airport, their emotions run high, fueled by anger and grief. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, a man from one of the victims' families breaks through the boundary line set by the police. He charges towards the criminals, screaming the name of one particular criminal, Jong Dong-bai. The policemen quickly react, attempting to apprehend him and prevent any harm. However, the situation takes a horrifying turn when the man opens his bag, revealing multiple bombs concealed inside. Chaos ensues as the bomb detonates, causing a devastating explosion. The windows of the airport shatter, filling the air with smoke and fire. The sounds of screams reverberate throughout the area as the scene turns into one of tragedy and devastation. The airport is strewn with scattered belongings and the harrowing sight of blood and body parts, the grim aftermath of the horrific explosion. Fast forward to 2022, we see a port where strong police presence is evident. Inside a police car, an officer watches a live news update on a screen. A young news anchor reports that the criminals arrested in the Philippines will be transported by ship to Busan port in 2 days. The wanted criminals being repatriated are classified as red notice criminals, the highest-ranking criminals identified by Interpol. The officer inside the car expresses his surprise to his fellow officers at how their mission is no longer secret. Given the high level of danger posed by the 20 captured criminals who fled from Korea to the Philippines, the Korean police are determined to ensure that the tragic incident of 2016 is not repeated. With their focus on bringing the criminals back safely, they entrust this crucial task to their elite force. The elite force, known for their exceptional skills and training, is prepared to face any challenges and ensure the successful repatriation of the dangerous criminals to their home country. As the bus carrying the captured criminals arrives at the Philippines port, a sense of tension fills the air. Policemen swiftly and methodically escort the criminals off the bus, ensuring their hands are securely handcuffed. One of the senior police officers holds a list of the criminals, calling out their names one by one. Among them, Park Jong-do, known as the Red Scar, and Lee Do-il are singled out. The young criminal named Jong-do, standing confidently at the front of the line, taunts the senior officer by mentioning his retirement and making a disturbing comment about his daughter's transformation into adulthood. The atmosphere becomes intense as the senior policeman's anger boils over. He strikes the defiant criminal hard on the leg, causing him to fall to the ground in pain. Seething with frustration, the policeman sits down, facing the criminal, and lectures him about the consequences of his choices, emphasizing that a different path could have spared him from his current predicament. In a shocking act of defiance, the criminal spits on the policeman's face, provoking a visceral reaction. Enraged, the policeman retaliates by delivering a forceful slap to the criminal's cheek before reaching for his belt. With each swing of the belt, the room echoes with the sound of the blows landing on the criminal's body. Amidst the chaos, one of the other criminals speaks up, questioning the legitimacy of Interpol resorting to such violent measures. However, the protesting criminal is quickly silenced by the other policemen, who maintain a firm control over the situation. The beating continues unabated as the senior policeman unleashes his fury upon the defiant criminal. As the commotion intensifies, a police car screeches to a halt nearby and a man and a woman step out of the vehicle. The female police officer approaches her fellow officer, questioning the identities of the newcomers. The officer explains that the man is a doctor, accompanied by his nurse. Meanwhile, the relentless beating of the young criminal continues, prompting the other police officers to intervene. The situation becomes chaotic as the officers try to restrain their furious colleague, who vehemently demands to be released so he can exact further punishment. The senior officer responsible for the police force is revealed to be Lee Seok-woo, and it becomes evident that he bears no remorse for his actions as he callously lifts Jong-do from the ground. The scene shifts to the Seoul Police Headquarters, where the Special Commando team, under the leadership of Woong, assumes control of the facility. Chaos erupts as they enter, but Woong steps forward and addresses the gathered personnel. He declares that from this moment onwards, the Special Commando Force will be in charge of the police headquarters in Seoul. Woong then proceeds to give instructions to Seok-woo and his team, who are responsible for escorting the criminals back to South Korea via sea. The atmosphere is tense as the new order takes shape, and the mission to transport the dangerous criminals hangs in the balance. The scene shifts back to the ship, where the criminals have been onboarded. Seok-woo observes the reactions of the criminals as he lays down the rules of the detention cell. While most of them protest and express their defiance, one particular criminal, Lee Do-il, remains strangely calm, almost unaffected by the rules. This piques Seok-woo's curiosity, as he senses a mysterious aura surrounding Lee Do-il. Meanwhile, Da-yeon, the female officer, and her team keep a watchful eye on the female criminals, including Myung, who is known for the heinous crime of slaying her husband and in-laws. The tension in the detention cell is palpable, as the criminals and officers coexist in this confined space, each with their own motives and secrets. On the other side of the vast cargo ship, we see the doctor and his nurse, Jae-yoon, who have a crucial mission to provide medical assistance. Jae-yoon's unease is palpable as she navigates her first voyage aboard a cargo vessel. Oblivious to the doctor's hidden agenda, she immerses herself in her duties. Little does she know, the doctor carries an intriguing assortment of unconventional instruments and medicines, raising questions about his true intentions. As the ship hums with activity, the officers, also assigned to pack meals for the prisoners, are annoyed, saying that even these filthy criminals get to have luxury. Apart from them, there are 2 other men who are helping out with the meals. Amidst their bustling kitchen routines, the enigmatic doctor slips away unnoticed, venturing into the depths of the engine room. Concealed within his possession are intriguing tools and mysterious medications. He navigates the ship using the maps in his possession, and reaches a highly concealed portion where he is received by another threatening man. He looks him up and down, and then motions him towards someone on the floor. Turns out, the doctor's main mission is to hypnotize the ship's most dangerous inmate, a criminal of unparalleled danger known only as Alpha. Veiled in secrecy and shrouded in the captain's explicit instructions, Alpha's presence on the ship remains a well-guarded secret, even from Seok-woo and his team. As he approaches the body, he is horrified. The person does not seem normal. He opens Alpha's mouth and is repulsed by the amounts of disgusting worms slithering there. How could this possibly be a normal human? The doctor is terrified to the core after discovering this sedated monster, and asks the man if it is okay for him to touch the body. The other man is unfazed, and tells him to just do his job and ignore everything else. Yeah, right, just consider him the elephant in the room. Meanwhile, back upstairs, the police distribute food among the prisoners, and a suspicious crew member among the cooking team secretly opens a door to one of the criminals' chambers. Back in Seoul, Dae-woon carefully examines classified documents that reveal Alpha's status as a military prisoner. With a clear purpose in mind, Dae-woon has chosen to keep Alpha's presence on the ship shrouded in secrecy, withholding this crucial information from Seok-woo and his team. Back on the ship, the atmosphere starts getting tense, as the 2 men helping out with the meals, along with a small group of other men, break into one of the storage rooms and force open a crate containing explosive. Turns out they are with the criminals, and have slaughtered the real cooks and have taken their place on the ship. The men are working with Jong-do, who we see has freed himself with a hidden pin that he carried in his mouth all this time. The men barge out of the room and run into the officers, who see them carrying weapons. Fearing their secret might be exposed, the criminals brutally dispose of them and hide their bodies. After this, they go to the control room of the ship and swiftly get rid of the cabin crew. Inside the control room, tension fills the air as the intruders disable the ship's communication networks. Their intent is clear: to sever all connections that could be employed to call for help. The once bustling channels of communication fall silent, leaving the ship isolated and cut off from the outside world. Unbeknownst to the crew and passengers, a dangerous game unfolds on this floating vessel. The perpetrators' calculated moves have left the ship adrift, with no means to reach out for assistance. The crew and those on board are now trapped, their fate hanging in the balance. Back in Seoul, Dae-woon learns about the sudden cut-off signals from the ship. While back on the ship, Da-yeon and her fellow officer also get a little suspicious when their walkie-talkies don't work. On the other side of the ship, Jong's inmate accidentally hits his handcuffs on the steel rod, which alerts the police. When the officer comes to investigate, Jong-do attacks him and brutally takes his life. In this instance, Jong's accomplices also arrive, and they get rid of most of the police officers on the ship, excluding Seok-woo. On the other side, we see Da-yeon searching around the ship with her walkie-talkie out. She comes across the doctor, who is terrified when she points a gun at him. Suddenly, her senior calls her from the upper floor, who happens to be standing nearby, along with 2 other officers. They help the doctor calm down and tell Da-yeon to put down her gun. As she complies, the doctor accidentally sees someone descending from the roof of the ship with an axe and tells the officers, who quickly run towards the place. They all reach the control room of the ship and can't believe their eyes when they see the bloodbath before them. Almost all crew members of the ship have been slaughtered. The man with the axe finally enters the cabin, and another bloody brawl ensues. Da-yeon and Seok-woo succeed in disposing of the men. On the other hand, the doctor, terrified, runs back to his room and quickly shuts the door and locks it. The nurse says that she can go out and check if he is worried, but he stops her at once for fear she might lose her life. Back in the criminal cabins, Jong-do sets every prisoner free, including Lee Dong-il, and together they decide to hijack the ship. Suddenly, he sees one of the prisoners trying to get cocky, and openly shoots the man in a display of superiority, showing everyone who the actual boss is. Prisoner Lee remains unfazed and doesn't support his plan. He denies becoming part of his group. Jong-do tells him to look out for himself if he is so unwilling to join them, and continues with his sick, brutal slaughtering, while Dong-il watches the deceased police officer and gets a flashback that leaves him gloomy. One of the old prisoners decides to follow Dong-il, and follows him out, while all of the others follow Jong-do to the other side to free the female criminal. Back in the control room, Da-yeon examines the crew members one by one, and finds one of them alive. She rushes to him and asks him if there is any device they can use to communicate with the headquarters. The injured crew member slowly tells her that there is a satellite phone in the engine room. The scene cuts to the storage room, where the criminals have collected all the bodies and are keeping them in the refrigerator. A few of Jong-doo's gang members check the bodies piled up over one another and are pleased with their work, while one of them stays there to keep watch. Down in the secret corner, blood is leaking from a pipe and dripping over the body of Alpha. A wave of dreadful horror fills the place, and the monster suddenly awakens due to the heavy smell of blood and slowly wrenches away its oxygen mask. On the other side, Jong-doo, accompanied by the other convicts, reaches the engine side and asks the men about the satellite phone. Ruthlessly taking the life of one crew member, he asks the other about the phone, who fearfully guides two of his men into the control room. They destroy the satellite phone. Meanwhile, Seok-woo and his team, on the way to the engine room, reunite with another small group of officers, and together they decide to visit the engine control room and call the headquarters for help. Little do they know that the phone has already been destroyed. Back in the engine room, the prisoners return with the man who led them there, and Jong-doo tries to take his life, but is stopped by Dong-il. The air grows heavy with tension as the two men lock eyes. However, the gravity of their situation is abruptly shattered as the doors burst open, revealing a surge of police officers storming into the room. The atmosphere becomes charged with adrenaline as the law enforcement confronts the convict. Seok-woo points the gun at Jong-doo, and then the chaos begins. Everybody starts hitting everybody else. Suddenly, big monstrous Alpha shows up to the party, and a chilling silence takes over the room when he literally sends a convict flying over to the corner with a single kick. Everyone panics when they see the prisoner as deceased. With his sight impaired by stitched-up eyes, Alpha relies on strange thermal sensors to target his victim. In a display of brutal savagery, he mercilessly slaughters another prisoner before the horrified onlookers. Alpha's inhuman nature is evident to all, as his speed and strength surpass that of an ordinary human. With each strike, he swiftly eliminates Jong-doo's companions and the officers, leaving a trail of lifeless bodies in his wake. Witnessing the carnage, Jong-doo's survival instinct kicks in, driving him to flee from the monstrous force that has decimated his team. But Alpha is relentless, closing in on his prey with lightning speed. As they engage in a desperate struggle, Jong-doo's every attack proves futile against Alpha's impervious form. Despite his past as a cunning slayer, Jong-doo finds himself outmatched by the sheer power of Alpha. Overwhelmed and outmaneuvered, Jong-doo succumbs to Alpha's onslaught, his life extinguished by the relentless force of this monster. Grips everyone witnessing the terrifying display of the devil's monstrous strength. Amidst the chaos, only Da-yeon, Seok-woo, the old man, and Lee manage to survive the relentless onslaught. Desperate to flee, they make a frantic attempt to escape, but Alpha swiftly closes in on them, seizing Seok-woo by the neck and effortlessly lifting him off the ground. In a selfless act, Lee steps in, trying to divert Alpha's attention and free Seok-woo from his grip, shielding the others from his imminent attack. Taking advantage of the diversion, Da-yeon seizes the opportunity and leads Seok-woo towards an exit door, guided by the old man's discovery. Despite Lee's valiant efforts, Alpha quickly overpowers him, determined to pursue the fleeing group, but Lee quickly catches up and engages him in a fight while the others try to escape. Da-yeon shoots Alpha, and Lee finally has time to escape. They narrowly escape the horrifying encounter and rush out through the automatic electric door before it is locked. Meanwhile, the ship comes to a stop due to the damage done to the engine. On the other side, D-Wong, unable to establish communication with Seok-woo and his team, resorts to satellite images to assess the situation unfolding aboard the cargo ship. Shock washes over him as he witnesses the telltale signs of violence and bloodshed, realizing that the criminals have managed to break free. Just as he processes the dire situation, his phone rings and he answers to find CEO Pyo on the other end. The CEO, well aware of the attack and the assailant aboard the ship, issues firm instructions to D-Wong, entrusting him with the responsibility of resolving the chaotic situation. Curiously, both CEO Pyo and Alpha bear a distinct mark on their chests, implying a connection between them. It becomes apparent that CEO Pyo holds some association with Alpha, and his orders make it clear that Alpha must be brought to him in the utmost secrecy, using the ship as the means of transportation. Enraged by the order, D-Wong punches a pole, and surprisingly one of his eyes changes color, implying that he himself might not be a normal human either. Meanwhile, back on the ship, two surviving crew members try to escape. However, their hopes are dashed as Alpha swiftly closes in on them, brutally ending their bid for freedom. The horrifying Alpha's relentless pursuit leaves no survivors in his wake. On the other side of the ship, the female convicts have managed to break free and are joined by the gang members who were watching the lifeless bodies. The ignorant party is unaware of the bloodthirsty monster wreaking havoc on board. The scene cuts to the room where Nurse Ja-yoon and the doctor have locked themselves in. The nurse hears some noise and goes to the window to investigate, when suddenly Alpha breaks through the window and attacks the poor nurse, taking her life. The doctor runs away in fright, seeing her lifeless body. Midway, he crashes into Seok-woo and the group. The group calm him down and then interrogate him about what happened. Seok-woo, fueled by desperation, tightens his grip around the doctor's neck, demanding answers about Alpha. Gasping for air, the doctor confesses that he was paid to administer drugs to Alpha, intending to keep him sedated throughout the journey. He expresses his bewilderment at how Alpha managed to awaken from his slumber and unleash havoc upon the ship's occupant. The Doctor emphasizes that he is merely a pawn following orders, unaware of the larger scheme at play. Intrigued by the Doctor's revelations, the old prisoner inquires whether the same organization responsible for selling vitamins that make a person younger is behind this sinister plot. With a solemn nod, the Doctor confirms the old prisoner's suspicions. A glimmer of hope emerges when the old prisoner asks if there is any medication available on the lifeboat that could potentially control Alpha's rampage. The Doctor affirms the presence of such medicine and directs them to the ship's basement. Driven by a desperate plan to regain control and ensure their survival, Da-Yon, the old prisoner, Lee and the Doctor set off towards the basement, whereas Seok-Woo sets off to find the remaining convict. The Doctor takes them to the room where Alpha was kept. They all arrive to find the 2 guards that kept an eye on Alpha brutally slain. Da-Yon searches some files in the room where Alpha was kept. She finds a document titled Classified Document of Alpha. Seok-Woo, on the other hand, reaches the room where the female convicts were kept and finds a bloodbath. Everyone else apart from Myong and another male prisoner have been ripped to pieces. Down in the basement, the group find out that the monster following them around is the result of an experiment of inventing human weapon. The monster has been alive for more than a decade. They find out that the beast is sensitive to the sound and smell of blood. It is 5 times stronger than a normal human, and its lifespan is much longer. As the group read about the monster, Alpha himself is chasing down and brutally attacking Myong and the male convict in a lift. The scene cuts to the year 1943, and we see some soldiers and doctors experimenting on a human body, which turns out to be Alpha. The situation turns ugly when suddenly the body stands up and starts a massacre, slaughtering the people present there. Back to the present, we see Seok-Woo finally finding Myong and the male convict. He manages to pull out Myong before the lift falls down in a freefall, carrying Alpha and the lifeless body of another convict. The crew below are suddenly alert. After hearing the explosion of the lift, the monster survives this explosion and comes out unbothered. Suddenly, a helicopter approaches the still ship. It is loaded with men from the Eon Genetics Organization's team, who inject themselves before going down on the ship. The crew is headed by Di-Wong. Down on the ship, Seok-Woo takes away Myong, hiding her in the cold room where the bodies are kept. Alpha walks into the kitchen and a struggle ensues, whereby Seok-Woo bites off one of Alpha's arms. As a result, Alpha throws him into the air with full force and slaughters him. As the monster approaches the cold room, Myong pretends to be deceased and is thus saved. On the other side, the men from the helicopter finally land on the ship. They search around to find Alpha. Suddenly, they are met with a panicked Myong, who is slain in cold blood by Di-Wong because apparently he didn't like her blabbering. One psycho after another. Hearing the sound of firing, Da-Yon and group run towards the place and see Myong's corpse. Da-Yon quickly points the gun at them, saying she is police. Wrong move, Da-Yon. Di-Wong again opens fire, and she is shot on the spot. Seeing all the madness around him, Lee attacks the group with an inhuman strength and within a second, grabs Di-Wong's neck. The latter is surprised, and quickly pulls Lee's shirt apart to reveal the brand mark. Turns out, just like Alpha, Lee was also a part of the bioweapon experiment, and he managed to escape, but alas, he was later found out and attacked when he had almost created a happy family for himself. Di-Wong returned and slaughtered his family in cold blood. Thus he planned to board this ship containing Alpha so that he could come face to face with the devil that destroyed his life and exact revenge. Lee, consumed by anger, brandishes his knife, aiming it towards Di-Wong. However, Di-Wong swiftly intervenes, deflecting Lee's attack, preventing any harm. In the midst of the tense confrontation, Alpha arrives on the scene, his menacing presence felt by all. Without hesitation, Alpha launches an assault, overpowering a guard and hurling him into the air with a fearsome display of strength. Di-Wong, observing the chaos, is irritated by Alpha. Alpha proceeds to eliminate the guards in the vicinity, one by one. Soon the clash between Alpha and Di-Wong ignites, a battle of formidable forces. Surprisingly, Di-Wong exhibits an astonishing level of power, matching Alpha blow for blow. With a single decisive strike, Di-Wong shatters Alpha's arm, incapacitating him. Seizing the opportunity, Di-Wong concludes the confrontation by ending Alpha's life, putting an end to the immediate threat he posed. Amidst the aftermath of the intense battle, Di-Wong and Lee stand as the sole survivors, ready to rip each other apart. The fight between them starts, and when Di-Wong makes a disturbing remark about Lee's poor little baby, he becomes enraged and attacks the man with utter seething brutality. Lee Dong-il gives up his life trying to exact revenge for his wife and child, and after stabbing the man more than a few times, pushes him into the wide ocean, then jumps after him to make sure he is finished. In the climactic conclusion of the film, we see CEO Pio visiting a grim dungeon where a multitude of cells hold Alpha like humanoid wolves, their savage nature held captive by chains. Amid the haunting scene, a particular cell catches our attention, revealing a child chained within its confines. The revelation strikes us deeply, as we realize that the child is none other than Lee's son, spared from Di-Wong's fatal blow. The film unravels the truth behind this unsettling revelation, a result of the experimental manipulation that Lee underwent, which has left wolfish traits embedded within his bloodline. The child, a product of these disturbing circumstances, carries the same wolf-like characteristics within him, inheriting the burden of his father's transformation. As the film comes to a close, We see Lee emerging from the ocean on the other side of the continent, still alive and unaware of his captive child, miles away in a dungeon.